Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hawks Latest, your number one source for news, updates, rumors, opinions, and you guessed it, the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. I'm your host, Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and today we've got a full slate of updates to cover. This is the 92nd episode of Hawks Latest presented by FanArt, so hopefully you guys have been enjoying all the videos on the channel. The growth has been awesome, and I've been having a great time covering the team. So the offseason is always an exciting time in the NBA, especially kind of as it's wrapping up, really. I mean, we're really close to preseason. But this year, the Hawks have made moves that have really turned heads around the league, and it's been a very exciting offseason. One of the most exciting in franchise history. I mean, from high-profile trades to smart draft night maneuvering, Atlanta's signaling that they are seriously ready to compete at the highest level in the Eastern Conference, and I think that they have taken the necessary steps to contention. I think they're right there, and really we won't know until we see them get on the court. But today we're going to break down the Hawks offseason, the perception of kind of chaos around the roster. There was an interesting article put out by one of ESPN's own, so we'll break that down. Some notable player movements around the league, a potential lineup weakness, and not even really a potential lineup weakness. This is something that's actually going to be a tough weakness, and it was nationally recognized, and we have to talk about that. And then even a player that the team could look to add before training camp gets started. It's a move that wouldn't surprise me, so I'm going to break it down here. And without further ado, let's waste no time and go ahead and start and get started in this video and talk about how, I mean, this year you'd be hard pressed to find an NBA fan who isn't talking about what the Atlanta Hawks have accomplished in this offseason. It's been great. It all began, and I'm going to break it down a little bit. I'm sure y'all tuning in absolutely know what the Hawks did this offseason, but for those who are a little unfamiliar, I'll break it down. So it was the major three-team trade that got things started. It was the one that brought Kristaps Porzingis, the all-star and NBA champion big man, to Atlanta. That deal really sent ripple effects across the roster. I mean, but the Hawks did not stop there. After that move, it was clear that they were going to kind of jump into this offseason where they were going to make certain moves to make themselves contend. During free agency, Atlanta made arguably the biggest splash of free agency, other than actually, it might be the biggest splash. Shams was hyping this up as one of the biggest off seasons ever, and it really wasn't. But I mean, at least the Hawks were active and kind of made it exciting for us. But they signed former Timberwolves guard. They did a sign and trade with Minnesota for Nickeil Alexander-Walker on a 4-year, $62 million deal. They also added sharpshooter Luke Kennard on that 1-year, $11 million contract. So just a kind of sneaky move. Trey was in contact with both Na and Luke Kennard, just as guys that could come in and catch some passes from him on the wing and score at the most efficient rate they ever have. But also the most interesting move came on draft night. They traded the 22nd pick to the Nets as part of the Porzingis deal, and the Hawks were just left with the 13th pick. Atlanta ended up flipping that pick with the New Orleans Pelicans, moving back to 23 in return. As we all know, they secured that super, super valuable 2026 unprotected first-round pick, which will be the more favorable of New Orleans or Milwaukee's picks. So Atlanta's pretty much guaranteed a top 10 pick next year. That isn't theirs. This could end up being a very good selection depending on how the teams perform. It also landed them Asa Newell. Oh, okay. So with that being said, all of this has led to a perception of chaos around the Hawks offseason, but really in a positive sense. But there's just a lot of factors that go into this. And in a recent Bleacher Report ranking of offseason chaos by Andy Bailey, Atlanta checked in at number 9. So, I mean, pretty high up on that list, but you'll see why. So he wrote, just in terms of the number of players in the number of players out, the Atlanta Hawks certainly had a fair bit of chaos this offseason, but they were awfully shrewd. They took advantage of the financial hurdles facing the Boston Celtics and Minnesota Timberwolves and added Kristaps Porzingis and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They also signed one of the best three-point shooters of all time in Luke Kennard. That's actually true, by the way, which is ridiculous. I think he's like third all time in players that have played a certain amount of games in three-point percentage. That's absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, back to the quote. He said they also he said those three and the continued development of Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, and Zachary Risachet should make up for the losses elsewhere around the roster. And the Hawks may now have the best all these guys fit with Trae Young team they've ever had. I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, these guys certainly fit with Trae Young, and that was really the kind of emphasis that Atlanta put on this offseason. And the losses that he mentioned, it wasn't a whole lot. I mean, in terms of actual players going out, it certainly was. But in terms of, contributing to winning basketball, I don't think they lost a lot. They lost some of the guys that struggled with their shots. I mean, the best shooter they lost was Georgia Niang, but he wasn't on the team for long. But I mean, getting rid of Clint Capella was a necessity, and they did that. The perception of a chaotic but strategic offseason is backed by expert opinion. In a recent ESPN panel ranking the teams most likely to take a leap this upcoming season, the Hawks were actually tied with the San Antonio Spurs for the top spot. As you guys know, the Hawks missed the playoffs last season. They had a chance. They actually had 2 chances in the play-in tournament to lock in that 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. They failed on both attempts, really due to inexperience. We actually talked about that in an episode because that was really the biggest thing that kind of kept Atlanta out of contention. And I mean, once they got into the playoffs, who knows what would happen, but that will always be a what if because Atlanta did not make it. But really anything is going to be a leap for Hawks fans. I mean, to consider that, to consider that one of the biggest leaps, going into next season, being up there with the Spurs, because that's pretty bold because the Spurs have a very good young core that has been nationally recognized for far longer than Atlanta's has. Panelists noted, though, that the combination of scoring additions, playmaking, and defensive talent that complement Trae Young with a weakened Eastern Conference, it makes it so the Hawks could emerge as legitimate contenders. And you can't really put the Spurs there yet, just considering their situation in the Western Conference. Of course, though, they'll have to prove it on the court, but this is all why it is very chaotic, and the Hawks might have the most chaotic roster in the league because we really don't know what to expect, and that's what's going to make this season super fun. So now let's turn to a former Hawk making news, and I actually have his jersey, funny enough, but I do not have it with me. Otherwise, it would be up there where the jerseys rotate every episode. But Cam Reddish, he's making some news because after 6 seasons in the NBA, Reddish is reportedly heading overseas to continue his basketball career, with Lithuania being a likely destination. So very interesting to see, just considering what we thought Reddish would be. He was once considered a potential cornerstone for Atlanta's rebuild. The season after Trae Young came to town, we drafted him in 2019 alongside DeAndre Hunter, kind of, with the idea that we were going to surround Trae Young with 2 high-level wings with real potential to grow as 3-and-D wings and really fit alongside him and match his kind of trajectory, and that ended up really not being the case. Drafted in 2019 alongside Dre. He showed flashes early on, and that's why I bought his jersey. I mean, he looked pretty good in spot minutes in that rookie and second season, his lone 2 seasons with the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, he averaged 10.5 points and 3.7 rebounds as a rookie. The most memorable moment from him with the Hawks may have been during Game 6 of the 2021 Eastern Conference Finals. I'm sure y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. It was actually against the eventual champion Milwaukee Bucks. He scored 21 points on 6 of 7 shooting from 3. And I mean, at the highest level, I mean, going up against the eventual NBA champions in the Eastern Conference Finals. And that was Game 6, so that was the game Atlanta was eliminated in. And, it was Trae Young had just come back from the injury that he suffered earlier in the series that Atlanta probably would have been NBA champions if Trae never got hurt, but that's a conversation for another day. But unfortunately, Reddish, after that season, he never fully realized the potential fans had hoped for. And he was actually traded to the New York Knicks in 2022 after he requested out of Atlanta for whatever reason. I guess we'll never really know the full story there. But he kind of wanted a bigger role, even though he was getting 30 minutes a night in Atlanta. Very weird. Then he went to New York, and then obviously, it kind of went downhill from there. It's unfortunate because Reddish had all the potential in the world to be successful in the NBA. He's always going to be one of the biggest NBA what-ifs. After his Knicks stint, he's bounced around, including stints with Portland and actually the LA Lakers. Over the course of his career, he has averaged 8.5 points and 2.7 rebounds per game, shooting 40% from the field and 32% from 3. Just very average numbers, average to poor numbers. Reddish's departure represents really the end of a true era for the Hawks. Even though he hasn't been on the Hawks in quite some time, it kind of represents that. So Trae Young remains, and Onyeka Okongwu is still there. But I mean, former pieces like Reddish, Hunter, Clint Capella, Bogdan Bogdanovic, John Collins, and Kevin Huerter are all gone. So that 2021 Eastern Conference Finals squad is completely dismantled. Atlanta's focus is now on a new wave of talent. I mean, guys like Jalen Johnson, Zachary Ricochet, Dyson Daniels, even vets that we brought in like Kristaps Porzingis and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But I mean, guys like Asa Newell and another vet and Luke Kennard. I mean, this is a completely new roster, and the group is poised to potentially compete in the Eastern Conference. This is the most talented team that we've had in the Trae Young era, and they're going to need to prove themselves before we, really jump to any conclusions. But I'm excited about it all. But well wishes to Cam Reddish, heading into the next chapter of his career. We hope it pans out and maybe he can be set for an NBA return at some point in the future. So even with a strong roster, the Hawks certainly have a very big weakness. One of the most notable is secondary playmaking. Trae Young is obviously one of the best offensive players in the league. I mean, a generational offensive engine. But what happens when he sits? And this has been a very huge issue in Trae Young's entire tenure with the Atlanta Hawks. They have really failed to kind of get a secondary creator, but also someone off the bench who can act as like a creator in the second unit. The best one he's probably ever had was probably Lou Williams, and you saw what he did with Lou Williams coming off the bench. I mean, they very rarely were on the court together. They looked fine on the court together, but when Trae would go to the bench and Lou would pick up that backup point guard role immediately, I mean, he would look great. I mean, just having a reliable scorer in the second unit, a guy who can also create some offense for others, it goes a very long way. If the Hawks are looking to contend, they cannot have an issue with depth at that spot. So Jalen Johnson has kind of made strides in his playmaking, as we know, but I mean, can he reliably run the offense with Young on the bench? I don't think so, but ESPN's Kevin Pelton recently weighed in a recent article. So he said, Atlanta's biggest roster hole is second unit playmaking. The Hawks' offensive rating dropped by 10 points per 100% possessions with Trae Young on the bench last season, which that's crazy. He said, and while Atlanta has upgraded its second unit backcourt by adding Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he's not a primary ball handler. Alexander-Walker, starter Dyson Daniels, and fellow newcomer Luke Kennard might share playmaking duties when Young rests. Dyson Daniels also might take on a bigger role as a lead guard in those moments, but this remains a potential thorn for the team this season. Atlanta will need to manage minutes and rotations carefully to maintain offensive efficiency. I mean, we've seen that Atlanta can be at the top of the league offensively when Trae Young is there. It's just a matter of when he goes to the bench. And I agree with Kevin Pelton about Luke Kennard. I don't want to see a whole lot of minutes with Nickeil at the point guard. I don't really like his he's a very capable ball handler, but just in terms of his creation for others, I don't necessarily like. Luke Kennard, however, is kind of a sneaky good backup point guard option, and I think that he and Vit Krejci will kind of get the most minutes at backup point guard this upcoming season. I mean, Vit has experience at the backup one. He didn't look great in those minutes last year, but he has since grown as a player, and they might kind of test it again. But Luke in Memphis, he oftentimes would run that backup point guard, whether it meant that either John Moran or Scottie Pippen Jr. was injured, but they felt comfortable with Luke Kennard kind of in that role. And Atlanta's going to experiment a lot with that. I expect him to see the ball in his hands more than it was in Memphis. But it's an interesting thing because they also have Kobe Buffkin. He certainly hasn't proved himself. And we're going to kind of talk about, what his role kind of looks like and a potential option to kind of motivate him a little bit in our next segment, actually. And we'll actually go ahead and get to that. So speaking of second unit playmaking, one potential addition for Atlanta could be Tyler Kolek of the New York Knicks. The young point guard has found himself buried in the New York Knicks backcourt logjam, especially after the signings of Malcolm Brogdon and Landry Shamet. The Knicks have a boatload of guards, and Kolek, after his rookie season, which really had some ups and downs, there's almost no chance that he is going to play for the Knicks next season. So it could result in them going ahead and selling. I wouldn't say selling high because he doesn't have a ton of value considering the on-court production in his rookie season, but this could be someone that they really look to reroute. Clutch Points had put out an article, and the writer had said, the expectation of several league sources is that the organization will trade a player for draft capital to clear up a roster spot. Jalen Brunson, Miles McBride, Deuce McBride, and the new additions in Jordan Clarkson and Malcolm Brogdon give the team depth at guard. Moving Tyler Kolek could afford the 24-year-old opportunity that he would not get in New York. So Tyler Kolek drafted 34th overall in 2024, so he's an early second-round pick. He really struggled in the summer league, and in this summer league, he averaged 11.7 points on 32% shooting, including 17.1% from three-point range, 5 assists a night on 4 turnovers a game across 5 games. Very kind of, I wouldn't even say average. Those are pretty poor numbers. just considering what they were expecting out of him after he showed some flashes in his rookie season. His rookie year numbers didn't look too great either, but this guy wasn't playing nightly minutes, so you can't really judge it based on that. I mean, with the Knicks looking to shed salary and clear roster space, Atlanta could be maybe a team that could potentially acquire Kolek for something as little as a second-round pick. This is a guy, like I said, after his struggles in the Knicks, and also the Knicks wanting to move off of salary in order to clear space for some of their new additions. This kind of makes sense for Atlanta to at least explore, because Atlanta has two non-guaranteed spots as their 14th and 15th roster spots. So bringing in Kolek on his rookie deal could be a pretty smart option. I mean, a competition between Kolek and a guy like Kobe Buffkin for backup point guard minutes could be exactly what the Hawks need to motivate development while addressing their secondary playmaking issue. Like I've been saying, the Hawks don't have a definite backup point guard, but if you put Kolek in there with guys like Kobe Buffkin and Vit Krejci and even Luke Kennard, it's going to bring out the best in them, especially that matchup between, not that matchup, but that battle between Buffkin and Kolek, I think, because both of them are on a very similar trajectory. They're similar in age. Honestly, they're kind of similar in play style in a way. It could bring out the best of both of them, and we could really see who we would want to move forward with as our backup point guard of the future, since they're both young. I think it's a great idea, and like I said, it would only require probably a second-round pick, and Atlanta has some money that they can take back in order to, still be avoiding the luxury tax. Kolek would fit right in to the culture, and I do think that this is a guy who Atlanta would benefit from bringing in. I certainly like the idea, but let me know in the comments what y'all think about that. I think Atlanta should take advantage of the opportunity, in their face here. So to wrap things up, the Atlanta Hawks have had an offseason full of bold moves. They've added high-level talent in Kristaps Porzingis, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Luke Kennard, all while securing future draft assets. Former Hawks legends such as Cam Reddish are moving on, signaling a new era, just really in the NBA, but for the Hawks specifically. And the team is exploring creative ways to improve weak spots. I mean, there's some certain roster weaknesses there, including secondary playmaking, and maybe they could bring in a guy like Tyler Kolek. I think he would perfectly match the timeline. So all signs point to a team ready to challenge in the Eastern Conference, but as always, the proof will be on the court. We won't know until we know. Can Trae Young in this new look roster rise above past playoff frustrations and make a serious run at the finals? Only time will tell. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Hawks Latest. If you enjoyed today's breakdown, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single update here on the channel. We're going to be pumping out videos every single day, keeping you guys informed on the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. But let me know in the comments what you guys think about Tyler Kolek, what you think about, Cam Reddish leaving for overseas, and, what you expect for this new look Hawks roster in the upcoming season. Once again, I'm Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and I'll see you guys next time.